From across Maryland, Virginia, and the District, this is Washington's 24-hour local news leader. News Channel 8's Live This Morning starts right now.
It's 9:30 in the nation's capital. Coming up live this morning, now he really can measure the drapes. Before they move, President-elect and Mrs. Obama get an up-close and personal tour of their new Pennsylvania Avenue home from the current occupants, the Bushes. And the government announced this morning another billion-dollar bailout for troubled insurance giant AIG. Is the auto industry next? Plus, D.C. police busted a Secret Service agent over the weekend in a prostitution sting. Hello, everyone, and thanks for watching News Channel 8. I'm Dave Lucas. Nice to have you with us on this chilly Monday morning. And we start this time with presidential preparations. Still another 70 or so days before Barack Obama is sworn in as the 44th President of the United States. But this afternoon, he and Mrs. Obama will visit their new home for at least the next 4 years. At 2, the President and Mrs. Bush will visit the first family-elect to the White House. Our Courtney Robinson joins us now this morning live with a preview. Hi, Courtney.
Hi, Dave. Good morning to you. Beginning this afternoon, the two are going to meet for 90 minutes, as you mentioned. At the same time, First Lady Laura Bush will give Michelle Obama a behind-the-scenes tour of her family's new home. For Obama, it will be his first time stepping foot in the Oval Office, not as a senator, but the incoming president.
We have to address the
His chief of staff is in place. In the coming weeks, we'll begin to see President-elect Barack Obama's cabinet unfold. This week, he's likely to name key staffers, potentially including Republicans and independents who helped him win the White House.
Putting together the cabinet is like a jigsaw puzzle, and he wants to make sure that it represents the diversity of our country.
On his agenda, Obama could use his executive power to reverse some of President Bush's executive orders. Things like Bush's ban on federal funding for embryonic stem cell research and the Bush administration's support of domestic oil drilling.
There's a lot that the president can do using his executive authority without waiting for congressional action, and I think we'll see the president do that.
But today, Obama will put aside his differences with the current president and work toward a smooth transition. In the traditional Oval Office meeting, the two men will likely discuss the faltering economy, the biggest focus of the incoming Obama administration.
We need a rescue plan for the middle class that invests in immediate efforts to create jobs and provide relief to families that are watching their paychecks shrink and their life savings disappear.
And of course, this meeting is happening as markets work to overcome devastating losses in October. And Democrats pushed the Bush administration to include the auto industry in the $700 billion bailout. Later this week, we'll hear more reports from the Labor and Commerce Departments. The Commerce Department is expected to reveal another month of retail sales dropping, Dave.
Yeah, unfortunately, the news is not good, at which they will be discussing. There are very few bright spots in the economy, particularly.
This is true.
Courtney, thank you very much. To take this issue now to the next level, we are joined live by our colleague, Politico senior editor David Mark. David is in the newsroom for us this morning. And David, during the final days of the campaign, John McCain used to warn his supporters Senator Obama was already measuring the White House drapes. Well, I guess that's okay now, right?
Yeah, I suppose he can bring the tape measure with him if he wants to the White House today. Now, this is where he and his family are going to be living just 70 days or now. So it's always a kind of a delicate issue when you've got this transition period, particularly since Barack Obama criticized George W. Bush so heavily on the campaign trail. At the same time, though, there's something about it. It's the majesty of the democratic process. No matter who you support, who you back as a candidate, the fact that it's a peaceful transfer of power, which is something that does not happen in a whole lot of countries around the world.
Absolutely. It's the hallmark of the change of administrations here. How much of the meeting in the Oval Office is substance and how much of it is style? Obviously, if the First Ladies are left to sort of go around the house and take a look, do the two men discuss anything of real importance, or is it just pleasantries and a bit of scratching the surface?
I think it's going to be more substantive than usually happens in these kind of situations. After all, we're facing this terrible economic crisis. We have shooting wars essentially in Afghanistan and Iraq. There are some real big fundamental questions about how to transfer the reins of government in this time of crisis. So I think it's going to be pretty deep, serious, substantive discussion, a lot more so than we usually see in these kind of situations.
Last week there was a very public show on the south lawn of the White House. The president and vice president and the staff, people from the executive office building, people from the west wing of the White House, and even some of the personal staff, the 80 or so who attend the First Family on that second floor of the White House. All of them gathered there, and the president coming very close to being a little verklempt, if you will, about the whole thing. It did seem like he's dedicated to making this transition as smooth as possible, and if there are sort of lingering wounds, they didn't seem to surface there.
Yeah, well, no doubt there's a couple things at play here. There's just some genuine nostalgia on the president's part, no doubt. He's lived here, he and his family have lived there for 8 years, and of course it means something when you're moving out after that period of time, particularly when you've been in the public spotlight. At the same time, President Bush does not want to go out as a failed president. He's trying to deal with his legacy here as much as possible. So it's in his interest to have Barack Obama be successful coming in and prop up the economy to the extent that he might even sign on to some policies that he normally would not be so in favor of, like a big spending stimulus bill that may go through Congress in a lame duck session.
I was actually going to get to that. You again have anticipated my question, because that's the next order of business here. Before he is sworn in, the president-elect will be a member of the Senate, and in that lame duck session that gets convened here fairly shortly, one of the things that the congressional leadership has said they want is another bailout package. So or not a bailout package per se, but a stimulus package, a bailout for the rest of us, I suppose you could characterize it.
Well, right. Incoming White House Chief of Staff Rahm Emanuel hinted on Sunday that President-elect Obama would actually steer clear of the Senate, that he would not participate in the deliberations. He didn't say that outright, but that seemed to be the sense he was leaving. It's kind of understandable on one hand. After all, he's going to be President of the United States, and to be wheeling and dealing on the floor of the Senate might look a little bit below the dignity of the office. Then again, he's still getting paid to be a senator from Illinois as long as he's in office. So we'll see. I think it'll basically come down to whether his votes are needed or not to pass it.
Yeah, and the Democrats do hold that much smaller majority until the new Congress is sworn in January.
Absolutely. So Obama's got a bit of a delicate dance here. Also, he doesn't want to look like he's taking ownership for any Bush policies. He wants a clean break when he takes office on January 20th. So he's got to be polite to outgoing President Bush, but he doesn't want to get too close at the same time.
The courtesies have to be observed in all of this.
Well, that's right. It's a funny transition as opposed to many parliamentary countries like Great Britain. The day or two after the election, the new people come in and the old ones are driven out, and that's that.
It happens quickly. David Mark of the Politico. Thank you so much for joining us, David. We always look forward to it.
Thanks, Dave.
Also new this morning, troubled insurance giant AIG is about to get another financial bailout from the federal government. The Treasury will pour another $40 billion or so into the giant American International Group. Add it all up, the new total in federal money for AIG is about $150 billion. Why is the new cash needed? The Federal Reserve and Treasury decided the original financial lifeline thrown to AIG wasn't enough to keep that teetering company afloat. In return for the money, the government will get partial ownership, some preferred shares in AIG stock. More cash for AIG. And Friday, the congressional leadership seemed ready to entertain the idea of a government bailout for the sputtering U.S. auto industry. Is this good business? Even good government? James Engel is an associate professor at Georgetown University's McDonough School of Business, and he joins us now on the Newsline. Professor, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Let's talk a little bit about the bailout business right now, because it has done what it was supposed to do, and that is to sort of unstick the credit markets and get going. But how much now of the responsibility does fall to the government to protect an awful lot of jobs, it seems to me, above all else, and particularly with the auto industry here. It is not quite a uniquely American business, but almost that, and certainly one of the legacy big businesses in this country. Now we find out that Ford and General Motors and Chrysler are all on very shaky ground. What's your view? What should the government do here?
The government needs to make sure the entire financial system doesn't collapse, because when you have financial institutions like banks and insurance companies, when they go under, all the people who've invested or trusted that company also go under. So you can understand why the first item of business is to make sure that the banks don't collapse.
The financial infrastructure.
Exactly. Now we need to worry about the fallout from the rest of the financial crisis. The clumsy handling of the crisis over the summer led to such a drop in consumer confidence that consumers stopped buying, and among other things, they stopped buying cars. So, to a certain extent, the problems are partly the result of the way the government handled the crisis in September and October, but also the automobile companies have plenty of blame to shoulder. I mean, we've had lots of...
We've been down this road before with these companies, have we not?
Oh, yes, we have. We've rescued Chrysler twice already.
Yes.
And now they're on the ropes again. It seems that each time we've rescued them, they've gone back to building big, heavy gas guzzlers and ignoring the fact that we have a finite amount of oil on the planet. So, if there is a rescue package, we need to make sure that it isn't just, here's money, go back and do what you've always done before. We need to make sure that there is an appropriate restructuring that is in accord with our national interest.
And here's one other thing, too, very quickly, Professor. When it became apparent that some of those financial institutions bailed out might actually be using that federal money to pay dividends to shareholders and that sort of thing in complete contravention to what a lot in Congress